Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Campus Consortium's Ed Talks webinar series on Transforming Education with Information Technology, 2022 Year in Review, and Future Trends. If you have any questions now or during today's presentation, please type them into the chat box or questions pane in the Zoom control panel. Without further ado, I would like to pass the platform to Dr. Carl Horvath, President at Campus Consortium.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. For a lot of institutions, it's a busy end of the semester, so I appreciate you taking the time. Ed Talk webinars are typically around not just technical know-how, but strategy, policy, thought leadership. And so I'm glad you're joining us today for our last Ed Talk webinar of 2022. It is December, and usually in December, we do an end of year review of what has happened in the education industry regarding technology. And we also discuss other topics and information about past successes, and then what the future holds for education. And that's what we'll be talking about today. We have two great panelists, Isaac Abbs, who's the Assistant Vice Chancellor for IT and CIO at Pima Community College, and Christopher Willitson, Director of Technology at Stonington Public Schools. So we will be really looking at all of education, from K-12 to higher education. There are many common impacts of technology on education, and then there are unique characteristics of each, and we'll discuss all that today. I would like to, start out with a poll question. This webinar, and if you've attended these webinars in the past, it's important we get attendee participation because we want to hear from you, the attendees, as well. And then we can answer questions, or if you have questions for the panelists, they'll be happy to answer. And if not, we always do a follow-up afterwards, and we can answer questions then as well when we send you a copy of this deck. Poll question 1 is, does your institution have a digital transformation plan for teaching, learning, and services? So we know society and students are very different today. Even employers are different than they were many years ago. And so education is going through many changes to address these issues. And they want to make sure that they're providing a relevant education for students and society. So many institutions have adopted plans that are really transforming the institution and the education they offer. So if you could give an indication where you are in that process, if you have one or don't have one, that's fine. Just answer honestly, because we'll publish all this information out. So there are many people and institutions that are in varying stages of transformation. Many institutions are struggling because of lack of resources. Others are already well into it, and we just want to get an idea of where your institution is at this time. We won't disclose anything about any of your institutions to anybody when you answer these questions, so they are anonymous. All right, so Campus Consortium. I'm Carl. I'm the president and CEO of Campus Consortium, and it's been around since 2003. And the goal is to help education with affordability and access to technology and innovation, and really provide equitable level playing field since there is a wide range of school types and there is a wide range of students, and we want to make sure technology is accessible to all of them. Please consider joining by visiting campusconsortium.org. We offer a number of services, news, and information. Hey, we just got the poll results back. Thank you for answering. And it looks like most folks are in the somewhat to, yes, we have a plan phase. And that is really the direction most institutions are moving in. They really do have to address this because there's requests from students and others for services, as well as connecting to students who are now, sometimes they're wanting to learn from home or access remote services. But some institutions are still working on trying to get there because they don't have the resources, and Campus Consortium helps with that, and we can help you if you would like to reach out to us, where we will connect you with the resources you need for digital transformation. We do have a big a virtual cybersecurity summit coming up in the spring, and we'll get information out to you about that. Love to have you join or present or both. And we'll have a number of IT security ed tech vendors also who will provide pro bono services, some of them, and advice and information, and special guest speakers. So thanks, Isaac and Chris, for joining us today. I'm just going to set this up briefly about what we'll talk about. That is the state of technology in education, trends, and our panelists will provide further insight and what they're doing at their institutions. And certainly we'll have time for all your questions. Second poll question before we move on is identify digital transformation obstacles and opportunities at your institution. Just select all that applies to you. And again, there are opportunities. We have great faculty and staff collaboration, or we have no money and that's really holding us back. Whatever applies to your institution would be interesting to know. All right. Moving on. To the next slide, I'm going to just briefly talk about what you're answering right now: limitations of budget, lack of training, IT security, compliance, cloud systems, a lot of moving parts to technology. And as institutions and education depends more on technology, it's even more important to protect the people that are using it, provide innovation, empower faculty and students so they can do things they didn't do before with teaching and learning, and student services. So there is a wide range of reasons why institutions can be successful and unsuccessful. There's also a lot of trends. Some have been out there for a while and are slowly developing, and others that have picked up the pace, such as extended reality, AI. Of course, security and compliance is important for a lot of institutions right now. Gamification has been on the trend list for a long time, but again, that's probably one of the slower moving technologies, but it is relevant for today's students. And here's the results of poll number 2. There's a very even spread with some of these responses. It looks like let's see, there's a lot of responses. So we'll say we have good IT support and innovation. That's great. 57% of folks are in pretty good shape, so they can do what they need to do. 57% of folks have, and this is not surprising. And faculty and staff resistant to change in academics. It's like that sometimes, and you can understand because. A lot of times faculty help develop programs and degree programs, and then, having to really reinvent that and redesign it is quite a bit of effort. And, faculty and teachers develop a method of how they interact and connect with students also. One of the fewer ones, though, is institutional collaborations. And, there's a lot of opportunity out there that we can tell you a bit more about. So here's the slide that talks about that. There's corporate and business and community collaborations and organizations that support education. A lot of these links and information are in the reference section of this PowerPoint. When you get it, you'll have access to it, or just reach out to us and we'll help. you get connected. Issues today: cyber attacks, diversity, equity and inclusion, strategic use of technology, and helping students adjust. There's a book that came out this year from the president of Temple University in Philadelphia called The College Devaluation Crisis. It's a very insightful read on legacy education and the need for some transformation to maintain relevance with today's student and with society. And he really lays out some of the steps that we can take as educators to make sure our institutions are, providing relevant education and really helping students achieve their goals. There's a great article on EDUCAUSE for higher education institutions, although there's a lot of information that also can be consumed by K-12. That link is also in the reference section. And really, it's this model of modalities and services, partnerships, and policies that all really have to be revisited and redefined and become agile and flexible, so we make sure that education continues to advance and that we are responsive as educators to what the students need. So that is also included in that book I just talked about. For K-12, this is something from the Brookings Institute, great article that's also included in references for K-12 institutions about transformation specific to K-12s and how they can change and prepare students for higher education and for society. So some of the key points that technology impacts teaching, learning, helping faculty, staff be prepared, policy and strategy. We talked about social issues, equity, inclusion, internet access, the usual suspects that have been there for a while, partnerships, and, really our goal is to advance education. And here's our next poll question, and I promise there's only one more after this, but if you attendees, if you wouldn't mind answering this one: identify the primary areas of digital transformation in your institution and select all that apply. So if you were to, if you haven't really approached digital transformation yet, but it's fine to answer this, what you think is a priority would be great. And if you have done this at your institution, what are you working on currently? And please just take a few minutes to answer that. Thank you. Before I introduce Isaac, I just wanted to give a shout out to and kind of give you perspective on who is attending today in the audience. And we have a variety of institutions. We have 2-year, we have 4-year institutions, public and private. They're higher education and K-12s, and great turnout for both. We have some our usual attendees that we love to see, like Richard Wack from Villanova University. Hi, Richard. Thanks for joining. And we have some international attendees. We have a university from Saudi Arabia, and welcome to our webinar. Also, we have state educational institutions. We have many school districts from around the country. And it's from west to east and north to south. So it's a great turnout. And if you're interested in collaborating and working with anybody, that's what Campus Consortium does, is make the connections to institutions just like you, or to institutions that you aspire to be, or just network you with the resources that you need. So poll number 3 says that most folks, looks like 81%, are developing their technology support and innovation, and their teaching and learning methods. That seems to be number 2, and other areas in there as well. We'll share the results of the polls with everybody before we end. And so I'm going to end right there and hand it over to our first presenter, Isaac Abbs. He is a visionary IT leader, and he's got extensive experience and a track record of innovation and success. And he's got a broad background in directing software development, system administration, and technology implementation operations. He's really got the ability to evaluate, strategize, and drive the design, development, and implementation of state-of-the-art technology solutions. Really what is needed today in so many institutions are leaders and also people who support leadership to ensure that we implement and support technology for the faculty and for the students and the staff that need to use it and rely on it every day. Isaac, I would like to hand it over to you, and please take it away.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. If we can go to the next slide. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. Sitting here in sunny but pretty cold Tucson, Arizona. It's about let's see here. It's I think about 50 degrees. So I know cold is relative based on where you're at, but I'm used to 75 being cold. So COVID did something that I think people like Chris and I have been pushing for years, and that's this digital transformation. And it pushed it overnight, and it kind of presented this "I told you so" moment. But with that came an immediate expectation of, where do we need to go and how quickly can we go and get there? And of course, that has posed, I think, unique challenges that higher ed has been able, fortunately, unfortunately, to hide from for many years that have now caught up. And that's kind of my first talking point, which is upping our security posture. Higher ed has kind of, we're seeing it at our institution now where it's kind of been, ostrich head in the sand. It's not impacting us. We don't have to worry about it. If we ignore it, it will go away. And there are pressures on us now that weren't there before that are quickly changing that. One of those is compliance. I'm assuming most people, especially in higher ed, if you issue federal funds, are familiar with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA. That is now requiring institutions to do things they previously didn't have to do. One we are dealing with right now at Pima Community College is multi-factor authentication. And one of the points, that I know that came up in the poll question, is faculty resistance, and that is a major one. We've made a very conscious effort to approach the MFA rollout with very clear, robust communication, training materials, and whatnot. But the group I continually hear from our faculty, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense. I don't want to do this every day. And what we're trying to do, in one way we're attacking that, is with clear, concise, and repetitive communication. And I found that to be very useful. Obviously, IT is not known for being the best communicators, and so where we can, try to make a change and communicate, it's been well received. Outside of compliance, cybersecurity insurance. I'm assuming a lot of you try to get cybersecurity insurance. We just renewed our policy this year, and I think we sent out to 40, different companies. 37 of them weren't even willing to do business with us simply because we are education. So it doesn't matter what we're doing, how good we are or not. Most companies won't even deal with us. And so that says something. It says something about where higher ed is and really where it needs to go. And a new one we're facing with, especially on a large scale, is fraud. As a community college, we are an open access institution. We provide instant admission, and we provide a lot of nice services once you become admitted to the college. That is now being heavily exploited, and so we're having to deal with that. And then time, like I said, time has caught up with us. We are now dealing with what a lot of our peers in the private sector have been dealing for a long time, and are having to quickly catch up. And so, here at Pima, we're trying to attack this from two angles. One is the technologies. What are the technologies that we can deploy? Hoping most of those are non-invasive. And so some things we've done this year, we've implemented privileged access management. And so, we are really trying to safeguard those privileged accounts that, if compromised, are leveraged to do really nasty things. So that was something we're really happy to roll out. We made did a major overhaul of our network this year, kind of going from a layer 2 flat network to a segmented layer 3 network. With that, we are getting ready to start implementation of micro segmentation. So for those of you who don't know what that is, think of it as kind of software internal firewalls between all your servers. And so what we're able to do, or will be able to do, is really control the traffic from server to server, indicating this server can talk to that server on this port and this protocol. So you can get very granular. So in the event something happens, the ability to navigate east-west is reduced greatly. I talked about multi-factor. Obviously, that one is invasive to the end user. Obviously, with the security, we are looking at some web application firewall with bot detection. We are implementing right now synthetic identity detection in our application. So currently, right now, we're doing a very manual review of our applications to try to detect fraud. But as we are picking it up, so are the actors, and they're pivoting in their attack mode. And so we're partnering with a third party to do that synthetic ID detection. Another thing we're doing, we have our integration. I know as a higher ed, everything needs to be integrated with everything, and that's a real challenge. And we have a homegrown system that we are hoping to move off of here in the next few months. So integration platform as a service is what we will be leveraging to move that off to a low-code, no-code solution that makes maintaining this easier. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but these are positions and skill sets that are hard to get. And so having single points of failure has become problematic. But the other thing we're trying to do is really humanize security awareness training. We might not always be able to get all the tools in the world, but the weakest point will and always will be people. And so what we're trying to do is roll out some micro trainings. I did this at a previous institution that was really well received, and it was an institution that had zero security posture when I got there. And doing these micro trainings, so you're 2-3 minute videos a month on a topic, and ensuring they're relatable to the individual personally as well as professionally, and entertaining. And so there's some vendors out there that really do some cool stuff. They're fun, they're memorable. At my previous institution, I knew it was working well when on Halloween, two ladies came into my office dressed as the characters from one of the platforms we were using from training. And that's when I was like, okay, this is working, and this is exactly the type of return that I wanted to see. So we're doing that, and we're doing it monthly, or we're moving towards doing it monthly, because it's security training is not a set it and forget it. And we have to continually educate and re-educate our staff. And then with that is the recommendation of monthly phishing simulations. We have to keep staff on their toes. And it may seem like it's excessive, but what we want them to do is always be on guard for a test, so that when the real one comes, the question, their first thing they should be is this a test? Looks like one of our tests, not falling for it. And it's something really cool that a peer of mine was doing at an institution that we're looking to do here as well. They made phishing fun, and they created a phishing derby. So PH phishing derby, where when people reported, phishing, caught phishing in a phishing simulation, they created these phishing with an F goodie bags that they would then, kind of give out to people who were able to identify. They kind of did a raffle. And so really thinking of ways to make security fun, so that it's taken seriously, and then, that it's memorable. And I think that's really the key there. Going on to the next topic, leveraging managed services to close the gap. I talked about skill sets and staff, and obviously I'm sure we are all faced with it's getting more difficult and more expensive to hire technology staff. It's the reality that we're always going to face. And in some areas we're able to compete a little bit, in others it's just too difficult. And that's where we as an institution have leveraged managed services. And I know a lot of times, looking at the poll questions, budget's a concern. Well, I can't pay for that. One thing I challenge my staff with is, what is perceived as expensive isn't necessarily expensive until it becomes extremely expensive because you didn't approach it the right way. And so what we've done is we've not necessarily augmented a lot of staffing with managed services, but when we've had retirements or people have left, that's where we've taken the opportunity to actually, procure those services. And in the end, if you take salary, fringe benefits, it ends up being cheaper. We've done that with our DBAs. It's really those, it was the team that managed our ERP system, the upgrades and the maintenance of that. We had a couple people retire all at once, and instead of trying to fill that gap, which was kind of a weird position, it was mislabeled here, we ended up working with a third party, and we're saving money in doing that. And we are also getting better service. We're getting better skill set. You know, when you pay for a third party for their skill set, the skill set doesn't get dated, right? It doesn't, it's not, you know, the company has to keep staff current. And so that's a key part there. Another thing we've done is where we've been able to get budget, you know, with COVID and HERF money, that seeded a lot of these opportunities for us. And one of that was, you know, really managing cloud services. We now have a SOC, and that is something that we manage. So we have, you know, eyes on the glass 24/7. Like I said, with the cloud services, I think that one, you know, you're also able to leverage, you know, less maintenance when you move to the cloud. So we've definitely adopted, I think I would say, as a cloud first strategy. We're not fully in the cloud. Our ERP system's still on-prem, but it's definitely where we're moving because staffing and maintenance is becoming harder and harder to acquire. And then I think, you know, another one, we're here today because we're familiar with Campus Consortium. Obviously, you know, leveraging a third company like this to get discounts where you can is extremely advantageous, especially, you know, in a sector where budgets are tight and costs are really high. And we're definitely, you know, grateful to Campus Consortium. We've joined them, you know, recently this year, and we've been able to leverage a lot of savings with them. So I think those are opportunities where managed services, whether it's, you know, augmenting or replacing staff, really can be advantageous to close the gap. And I think if you're actually looking at the return on investment, can actually save. I know the sticker shock is high, but if you're able to, like I said, replace individuals, a lot of times it is cheaper than not. And the last one's the fun one, right? This is where when things aren't burning down, we get to focus our energy on, and that's really the innovation. And I'm very fortunate to work for a chancellor who's extremely innovative. I would be remiss if I didn't say he's probably more innovative than I am, and pushes me in these areas. And that is a great blessing here at Pima Community College. And so one of the things I've been tasked with this year is really exploring XR, the virtual reality, augmented reality, and how it relates to student services and augmenting education. And it's something I, you know, before this really didn't think much about, but it's a really cool space when you see how it's done and see how it's done well. The good thing is we're getting faculty with an appetite for it. You know, obviously it doesn't come with a cheap cost, and I think that may limit what we're able to do. But when, you know, education is changing, right? Higher ed is changing. Carl talked about, you know, a book. There's another book, The Great Upheaval, Scott Van Pelt, and I can't remember the other author that the chancellor had us read this summer. You know, students, the value of education is changing. What students perceive as a value is not what it was 10, 15 years ago, probably even 5 years ago. Students want just-in-time education. They want something that's tangible, that's marketable, that they really can go and get a job with. And this is one of the cool areas we're exploring with the XR space is that workforce experience. You know, I can get hands-on training virtually, and it's obviously cheaper to train somebody to, you know, virtually work on an airplane than to provide, you know, a whole bunch of airplane engines to work on. We do both, and I think that's important. It doesn't replace, it augments. And then there's the, you know, in talking with our student services staff, you get the student who doesn't know what they want to do, and being able to virtually provide them some opportunities to try things out is really advantageous. And I think that is a competitive space that higher ed is going to have to be in as we're facing competition from online colleges. You know, they can offer cheaper, faster education, but it's that really hands-on piece, whether it's virtual or not, that I think can be the differentiator for higher ed. And so I also talked about robotic process automation. That's another way of, you know, do more with less. So we are in the early stages of getting RPA bots to do some, you know, manual tasks that, you know, can replace day-to-day mundane processing, and looking to, you know, advance that down the line, and where we can leverage it as much as possible. One thing I wasn't going to talk about, but I want to add, because I thought it's really important on one of the poll questions, was about the digital divide and access. You know, that is something that is extremely important to Pima Community College. We have invested a lot of time and effort and dollars to trying to close the gap, and it's a tough one. You know, I think the responsibility is with way more than just higher ed. But one of the things we leveraged her funds to do is we've created a loaner pool of devices to the tune of about 2,000 devices. I think, on average, we have about 11 to 15,000 students. So just to give you an idea of what percentage that might look like. But we have 2,000 loaner devices. We have some MacBooks. We have Dell laptops and some iPads that we make available via our library for checkout. And students who don't have a device or otherwise couldn't attend, we make these types of devices available. And we've seen it be successful. And we've also seen it in areas with our online education as we're moving more and more to online. And that's our fastest growing college, if you will, our campus. We have students who otherwise could not continue. They have a device, but the device breaks and they would have to drop out. And so this is where this has helped. When we were closed during COVID, we actually turned campuses into hotspots, parking lots into hotspots. We made Wi-Fi devices available to students. So we've really have focused efforts on trying to close the digital divide. Like I said, we had seed money from HERF, but the college has operationalized a couple $100,000 a year to keep this program whole. And it's something we believe in, but it's not easy. I mean, we've had some very heated debates at the college about, do we give every student a device? And the college was very close to pulling the trigger. And in the end, some people really questioned the type of device and, kind of, have we really thought this out? What is it, as a community college, what happens if someone just signs up and wants to take a yoga device, a yoga class? Do we now give them the device? Are we charging them for a device? So there's, we need to kind of mature out the business plan before I think we move forward. But I can tell you that is a direction our chancellor is very heavily moving towards. And so just wanted to mention that because that was something I saw had a pretty high score on the poll question. So thank you all, I appreciate it. And if there are any questions that come up, I would be glad to answer. There's one that came up. The insurance is frustrating, extremely. It's going to get more and more painful. I'm pretty sure next year we're going to have to enforce MFA for students, which will be a whole nother headache and hassle. So yes, I can empathize greatly. Thank you, Carl.
All right, Isaac, thank you so much. Well, that was a great perspective, not just what's happening at your college, but really what's you hit on a lot of points that I speak to higher eds and K-12s every week from all over, and very similar type of concerns as what you've said, the cyber insurance, the MFA. Everyone, if they don't have it, is getting it. A lot of people are concerned about being late to online education, but there's really not a choice in some respects for offering those options to students, because things are certainly changing. And then, of course, competency-based education also. So as you said, great point, students will spend 4 years, 2 years, whatever amount of time and come out with a degree, but then they need to have marketable skills as well to be employed. So great insight. And the digital equity, the digital divide, the access, that is a very big issue right now. There's so many organizations and policies that are either currently under construction or in the process of being developed, and many institutions, just like you said, they're debating, do we do this or do we do that? So there's a lot to unravel over the next few years, but I think a lot of these changes are significant, and as you said, have been accelerated due to COVID, and we'll be seeing some changes. And the job of IT is to really try to provide that support to help empower students and faculty and staff, and create that change that makes sure education is valuable to society and to students. I just wanted to comment also that as you're speaking, before we move over to Chris, in fact, I'm going to move to the last poll question. Please, audience, if you would answer this one, which has something to do with what Isaac and what Chris will talk about in just a moment. Identify technologies and trends that will impact the near future of education. And so this will happen soon. Some of these technologies, others may not. But in your opinion, please identify what you think is a trend that's up and coming. And if it's not listed here, feel free to put your answer in the chat. And just wanted to jump over to the attendees. The who we're talking to as far as who's attending is a wide range. It's not just IT folks. We have leadership of institutions, vice presidents, cabinet members, chief positions that run institutions, deans for academic programs. And we also have providers of services, assistive technology specialists and instructional designers. We have librarians. So, technology really is impacting everybody within education. We have superintendents that are attending from some K-12 schools. And it's not just in the US. We do have international attendees as well. So thank you, Isaac. I'd like to introduce Chris in just a moment. But first, our last poll question: identify technologies and trends that will impact the near future of education. Looks like a lot of folks are divided on many of these. But, looks like the highest response would be artificial intelligence and adaptive learning, and looks like assistive technologies, among others. So, yeah, thank you for responding to that. We'll publish out all these responses so you have access to it. I'd like to introduce Chris. He's got a career that spans from private to public sector and pharmaceutical. So it's great that you have the corporate background, because there's a lot of lessons learned there. I'm sure you can bring into the education space, Chris. And you oversee a department of that has multi-million-dollar budgets, and you have to also deal with the community, the Board of Education, and all of the technology for your school district. And you work closely with interdepartmental committees to bridge the gap between teaching, learning, and educational technologies. And it kind of resonates a bit of what Isaac was talking about, the gap and bridging that gap. I'd like to hand it over to you, Chris, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Horvath. Thank you, Isaac. I'm going to be touching on a lot of what Isaac previously discussed and sort of expound on that and really drive it home. I've been frantically taking notes and adjusting some of my talking points here while Isaac was speaking. He's must have previewed my list here. So the first thing I want to talk about is, how do we implement all of these things? So the biggest trend that education and nonprofit sectors are facing is cybersecurity, bolstering cybersecurity awareness, both from the end user perspective. He talked a little bit about some of the training, and I'll talk about some of those multi-tiered approaches and what we've done. I'll mention some companies by name who we use. I'm not endorsing them specifically, but I just want to give you some core examples, some real world methods that we've taken to accomplish some of these things. But before we get into all of that, I want to talk a little bit about funding. So us as educational institutions, we have these Fortune 500 companies, essentially, is what we are running when you look at the infrastructure that we're supporting. So, our district is 2,000 students, approximately 400 staff. You're looking at about 2,500 employees, right? An employee is issued a device. They have login credentials. They use applications on a day-to-day basis. So these students nowadays in the modern era are essentially an extension of our employees. So what we're looking at when we support from the back end and the infrastructure we have to have in place, the security that needs to be in place, it's not very different from our staff, right? So I tend to lump that in. The use cases are different, but it's almost like a marketing versus a business office department. It's just a different department, but a lot of those same core policies and procedures are going to apply to both in terms of industry best practices. So some of the areas, again, I'll be speaking from a K-12 perspective. A lot of this overlaps across public and private sector, and certainly for higher ed. But one thing I found that was very useful for us in terms of funding was turning to our town. So the Board of Ed and the town of Stonington are two completely separate budgets. Although we are a part of that pool, we manage and maintain our own budget. We present them one number and they approve. I know every town, every state is slightly different, but one of the areas that we have found very useful in leveraging is the capital improvement program that towns across the state, across the nation leverage. For us, it's any projects over $10,000. You present a capital improvement program budget to the town. So I know in Connecticut specifically, where I'm located, a lot of our other districts were not taking advantage of that. And after speaking with, they've started presenting some of these bigger project refreshes to the Board of Finance. They've okayed that and started building these funds. So one area, and again, it's more work for us, right? I have two different budgets to manage. I have two different boards. I have a Board of Finance, a Board of Ed. I'm going to double meetings. You know, it's not pleasant in terms of your schedule, but giving them that level funding, again, it varies town by town, but ours does a 10-year projection. I give them 6 projects that are everything from computer systems infrastructure to building security and cameras and door access controls. You know, we all know in K-12, if it plugs in, you manage it, right? So with all of that, not having all the different departments to hold these things, we're taking on more and more. I watch facilities budget drop as it increases mine, as I take over cameras, as I take over door access control. You know, more and more of these things are becoming an IT problem, not this department or that department. So giving them that budget projection, again, it's about $750,000 that we're projecting over multi-years, but they're able to start saving money for some of these projects. Unlike a Board of Ed budget where we return all of our funds at the end of the year to the town, we've all played the use it or lose it game, right? All of a sudden that June 1st, we've got POs flying out. The beauty with the town funding, and again, this exists for the most part across the nation, but you're able to sort of pool and build those accounts. They like it because my OpEx budget isn't spiking up and down. It provides them an easier pill to swallow when they can see what these projects are for, what it's going to do. And the biggest thing, is focus on maintaining existing equipment, infrastructure, technology, best practices, because if you're coming to them and saying, I want to do this new project, this new thing, your Board of Finance is likely looking at a bottom line, and new and adding is great, but it's not going to keep the lights on. If you're presenting to your Board of Finance that you are maintaining existing programs, maintaining existing infrastructure, basically just not taking away from the students, and you can get creative on how you pitch this, but essentially you want to promote keeping what we've got, make sure that's stable. And then in your operations budget, maybe that's where you can play with some new things. You're now freeing up money that would have otherwise been slated for refreshes at a capital expenditure, but now you can worry about new software and maybe test driving new pilot programs, and get your Board of Ed on board with that so that you're not going over to that board. So you can kind of segment out your priorities and then help offset that OpEx budget by leveraging capital funds. So that's one thing we found has been an incredible help. There's tons of tools out there, right? So there's grant finder tools. Over the last 3 years, received about $700,000 in different grants, ranging everything from E-rate program, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. If you're not already leveraging it, you're leaving money on the table. Certainly look into that. You can hire, we hired a consultant for a couple $1,000 a year. They handle everything, soup to nuts. They do all of the applications, the permitting. So it can be overwhelming when you start looking at all of these grants and realizing how much time goes into applying for these. We were lucky to receive an in-kind grant from Campus Consortium here for some managed SOC services that we're implementing. So again, leveraging those existing funds, taking advantage of other federal grants you might not think about. We just received a grant last year from the Department of Justice for a security grant to implement a new PA system that offers emergency alerting. So you might not think to check Department of Justice sites and these other entities from the federal government that offer, you look at E-rate, that's FCC. Again, all of these other agencies from our state side, we leveraged a Department of Environmental Protection. We've got a DEP grant we received through PURA, the Public Utilities Regulation Authority, for implementing new projectors because it was part of their PEG-PD program. So there's all kinds of these weird little niches where, yes, it is a little bit more legwork, but it's free money, right? It's a few hours, if it's federal, maybe a lot of hours to get the grants written and processed and get on. But that's a great way to supplement. So you've got some of those town funds you're leveraging, OpEx, and reaching out for these grant programs. Even hotspots, we talk about bridging the gap. And during COVID, all of a sudden realized how many of our students did not have network access at home. We asked the question during registration, but most parents breeze over it. So we leveraged T-Mobile's Project 10 Million. We received 100 free hotspots at no charge to the district for 5 years as part of that program. So there's lots of unique little niches out there to find those pockets of money. Because I get it, it's tough, but the more money you can free up and supplant, the more money you can free up to do other things, which I'll jump right into here with the importance of a multi-tiered approach to cybersecurity. Isaac was talking about managed services. I can't drive that home enough. My department is 7 people managing our 2,500 employees, right? It's not feasible. We wear so many hats. My network engineer is also on door access control and security cameras. That's 3 different career paths right there, right? So taking advantage of some of these managed services, again, through Campus Consortium, we're not yet onboarded, but we're rolling out a full 24/7 managed SOC with a SIM solution. So using a log ingestion to help identify early signs of issues. And I won't go too deep in any of this because we can spend all day just on cybersec, right? But finding out where can you increase lines that perhaps you're already leveraging, endpoint detection and response. We were a Carbon Black customer. We just moved over to Cyber Reason, and we're using their managed endpoint detection and response. So we have 24/7 eyes on keyboards now. When you look at the bottom line, it was about $11,000 a year increase. I mean, again, it's all proportional, but you can see how offsetting one thing over here, and then maybe you bake that in a multi-year, you can do a lot more with a lot less. And also looking at existing systems, maybe you have an application, like if you're looking to roll something else out, we just went through this. We were about to onboard a new central HR management platform and realized that, our payroll system offered that add-on at no additional charge, and it accomplished and checked every box we were looking at. So talk with the other departments, look at, deep dive. A lot of these software applications, our district, we manage over 300 unique applications and pieces of software. A lot of the times we as IT, we know from a high level, here's the firewall ports I need, here's the user authentication process. Did they sign a student data privacy agreement? Okay, great. You're off to the races. You learn how it works. We're not going to touch it. So a lot of the times there's unique opportunities there to leverage what you already have and maybe more efficiently. And again, a network vulnerability assessment, paying someone to come in and have a separate, third set of eyes on your environment, provide, recommendations for remediation. And if you can afford it, great. Maybe you can also pay for that remediation, right? Getting a 40,000 page PDF on, SNMP V1 settings you have on all your printers isn't going to help you when you've got to manually log into every UI and change them. And not that I'm speaking from experience or anything, but it can be daunting, when you go through some of these security audits. So again, multi-tiered approach here. We just rolled out, multi-factor authentication to our staff. This is nothing unique to us. We're in the same boat as Isaac, where we're having student accounts breached because they're setting their passwords to easily guessed, and we can't have a third grader walking around with a USB key for 2FA. There's some interesting logistics when you're looking at your K-12 population on how you're securing that. So we've used some SSO platforms like ClassLink for us that allow those students to sign in with a QR code. So now we're leveraging the cameras on those Chromebooks to capture that sign in as the sort of 2FA method for those young kiddos. And certainly our teachers are a lot happier. They used to have to run around and type in a generic basic password, which wasn't secure to begin with, but still had to have something to sign in. Now the kids just hold up their little laminated lanyard and they're in, and they're off to the races, and we've got auto applications launching. So in these discussions with cybersecurity, it's often, what are we taking away, right? What are we restricting? What are we going to make your lives more difficult by doing? We use KnowBe4 security training. I'm not sure what Isaac uses over there, but again, that's for the awareness and that's for compliance. So again, we do some of that testing. It's a nuisance, but there's fun activities you can do with it. If you can make your life, teachers' lives better. Sometimes you just got to be a salesman when you're pitching some of this. You kind of want to make them seem like they're signing up for it, like it's almost optional, even though we both know it's not. So trying to have those discussions, and part of that is around reaching out. I've been in this role for 3 years. There hasn't been a real deep dive into bridging that gap, not so much between students, but between teaching faculty, curriculum teams, leadership, and technology departments, right? So we've formed just this year a curriculum technology committee. We have technology integration specialists who are just stipend teachers who are sort of our tech savvy. They come to the table, curriculum team comes to the table, our assistant superintendent, myself, our systems administrator, and the building technician rotate through depending what the topic is. And we sort of have an all hands discussion, which many of you, I hope, are already doing that. I think we were a little behind the 8 ball on that, but starting to really garner, okay, this is what the teacher needs for that classroom. Hey, we're already using something similar over here. Do we want to leverage that so we can manage it easier? Or discussing, hey, we've got this great tool. Is this something you can see useful in the classroom, rather than just myself receiving a call from a sales vendor who's trying to pitch a product, and I say, well, that sounds great. I don't know, much about teaching. I'm not a teacher. I was once a student, but technology was very different when I was in school. So having those conversations on who's implementing the technology, right? You might find, oh yeah, they're perfectly comfortable with restricting this or that setting, or they may offer feedback to you that says, yeah, this isn't going to really work. Nobody's going to use this. You can spend $20,000 on this tool, but people are just going to find a way to circumvent it and carry on their normal lives. So having those conversations with subcommittees, I know more meetings, we hate signing up for subcommittees, but sometimes it can help even save money in the long term. And then just network segmentation, again, just to reiterate, if you're not already doing it, making sure you're leveraging VLANs. We're moving over to a fabric network where we're going to be exclusively using ISILs and Mac authentication. So we won't even be tagging ports anymore. It'll be you plug in an HP printer. I know that HP vendor's MAC address, octet, and it automatically gets this routing policy. So a lot of work to get there, but that frees up a lot of my network engineer's time, right? He's not tagging and untagging ports anymore. These switches are going to auto provision. So again, there's unique ways to save time and money on the back end, but it takes some legwork to get there. So again, just talking about, I know we're running up on time here. I'll quickly just mention, and I can share these links out too, but where do we find these additional resources, right? Help me. I'm inundated. I'm getting hit from all different directions. We've got unfunded mandates coming down from the state and federal government. Where do we turn? Where are the free resources? So MS ISAC, if you're not already signed up, I would start signing up with them. They have a bunch of free tools. Their CIS Workbench is a no-charge tool you can use to run audits on your systems. It will run that against NIST standards and CIS. Again, we won't go too deep into all that, but there's a lot of free tools out there you can leverage to sort of run your own preliminary vulnerability assessment. Grab the low-hanging fruit, get the easy stuff out of the way before you pay a vendor to come in and tell you what you already know, right? So go ahead and start that cleanup process. It might take a year. All of these things, it sounds like it's overwhelming. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen in a year or even two. But chip away at it and have a plan in place. K-12-6 is a great organization. They're a charged membership. So again, there's some costs associated with that. Your local government may offer free assessment services. A lot of these, the Infrastructure Jobs Act coming down, there's going to be cybersecurity funding delivered down to your state, and then your states are going to be delivering it out to the towns. And some of that money can be used for free vulnerability assessments. Take advantage. Pen testing is not cheap. Red team, blue team, it's expensive. We don't have $60K a year to throw at, alternating between internal and external auditing. So use the tools that we've got at our disposal. A lot of that is government funded, but take advantage, because the other thing is, if no one uses it, they're not going to keep funding it. They'll end up, dissolving these programs and these other agencies. So, don't feel like you don't need it and you want to save that money for someone else. No, hit it. And then, providing your team with certification opportunities wherever you can. I pay for the courses for my staff to take. They pay for their certification test, and I pay for recertification. So that's my incentive to my staff to go out there and get those industry standard certifications, advance your career. I'll be sad to lose them when they go, because I know they will outgrow the organization, but I'd rather have someone underemployed here and moving on to a job, that they deserve, and leave behind a well-built organization. And then lastly, and very quickly, preparing our students for the workforce, right? We talk about restricting devices, blocking every social media site, making these one-to-one Chromebook initiatives essentially bricks in students' hands that they then take home and they don't want to use. It's a school device. Ew, get this out of here. Where's my cell phone, right? So instead of doing that, why don't we make these Chromebooks a little more accessible? Maybe we open up some non-educational sites, nothing inappropriate, of course, but maybe we allow a little bit more access to other resources that these students are using on a daily basis. We currently allow them access to social media sites. We have GoGuardian filtering, so they're being filtered at home. We have to remain SIPA, COPPA, FERPA compliant. We meet all those needs, but encourage the students to use the devices for more than just school, right? That's how it works in the real world. We all use our work laptop for personal use, and it's a little bit more of a seamless transition, gearing towards that mobile first work environment. The real world supports agile teams. It supports work from home. That's the era we live in. Why aren't we supporting that? And again, we have some CTE programs. Typically, you think, okay, these are skilled trades. We're getting kids who maybe aren't ready for college, but we're getting them prepared for working in the trades workforce. The same applies for technology. We can have CTE programs. Maybe this kid isn't ready to go to college, but we can have them get CompTIA certifications. We can have them working towards getting a job straight out of high school that's going to give them a pretty good salary without a college education. Not to knock higher ed, I think we can all agree it's not for every single individual student, but we tend to make these broad strokes when we roll out technology and initiatives. And that's another unique way. That's a program we're starting to roll out next year, is identifying kids who are very bright and have brilliant minds, but just for whatever reason are not built for college. Let's find those certification paths and get them in the workforce.
All right, Chris, very good. Isaac and Chris, a fountain of knowledge, experience and information. I think both of you have provided some great tips and I think a confidence in being able to move the needle on technology. We know the education industry is tough because it's different than corporate. The funding is different. The resources are different. The adoption, everything is slower. But it sounds like you've really made some good moves in both of your institutions. I think you're right on about the managed services and being creative how to use the IT budget numbers. And that doesn't mean eliminate IT staff. That means repurpose them where they're really useful, maybe on campus or interacting with the faculty and students, rather than maybe doing something on the back end that you can have automated or done by another service. So all great information and tips about grants and other resources. I think we need to set up another webinar in the coming year with both of you, because each one of the items you talked about, we could dive into one of those. I mean, Isaac, the digital equity topic, and then Chris, you talked about opportunities to strategies to find funding. So really good information, and I appreciate both of you being panelists today, and I'm sure we'll follow up and have another discussion. And we had great retention with our attendees. They stuck in there and really were listening to what you were saying. Any parting or final words?
Oh, just thank you all for attending. It's not easy, as Chris mentioned, and there's a lot of resources out there though, and definitely use them, because it's a use it or lose it. And we would hate to see that funding go away, because those are the resources we can all leverage at least to start something, and oftentimes keep it going.
Absolutely. And thank you both, Isaac and Dr. Horvath. I think this was a great chat, and I always enjoy these.
Yes, I really appreciate both of you attending and being panelists here. And really also shows there's a lot of similarity between what higher ed and K-12 do. And although there are unique cultures and environments to both, there's also a lot of the same. So we'll have you both back if you're willing. Would love to further the discussion. And we'll do that in 2023, which is right around the corner. So again, thank you for both of you for attending and participating, and thank you for attending and participating to our audience. Great job with the feedback on the status of your institutions, as well as your opinions about trends. We're going to put all that information into a report for you and get this out to you, so you can see what the state is of digital transformation according to this webinar. So thanks very much. And a big thanks from Stephen Bigda too, who's an attendee, and much appreciated. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.